No, that's not my friend.
I will if you want me to.
That's
You can always use another grandma.
From the back, you reminded me of Cynthia, George.
Pretty took a
And,
job, man.
Yeah.
I don't, long time ago.
How are
She said I would.
Oh, did
And I said, well, you call me grandmother if you want. So she does. She calls me grandma all the time. And she has pretty long dark hair like yours. I think hers is dark.
Yeah, I just saw her.
I enjoy sitting by you like that and watching her. So
Yeah, I was just looking at pictures of my brother and sister so much like him. Yeah, it's like actually.
well, it is so.
Yeah, it's.
Morning.
Well, honey,
Little lady.
oh, that is precious. Look at those
Like his, when he does like the way I look, yeah, I guess it's like.
Morning. Morning, teacher.
Morning. After that lesson, I got nothing.
I'm probably gonna have to sit up there, so I can't decide whether to sit up there to hear the teacher or sit back here so I can hear the comments.
Well, I may put you in the corner. Man, that lesson was, it's Romans 2. I was telling Greg, I got nothing left. I'm gonna recap Romans 2, I guess, or what he said.
Did we finish chapter 1 last week?
Yeah.
I guess we did.
Wednesday night.
Yeah. You can't drive on Wednesday night. Man, I was thinking, Sean, please stop.
What you need?
We'll wait just a minute. I got a feeling there's still a couple more coming.
I'm like, I feel I'm missing something.
Feel free.
She slept Harper last night. Her and Gracie slept over at her house. So I only had to get one out of the house. I was like, okay, I'm already feeling light, and now I'm like, oh, this is weird.
Discover what we discovered. When you get 2, it's now 101 defense versus
Yeah.
if you ever go to 3, then it's zone.
I know. And so we're like,
Well,
is it worth it? Is it
oh,
worth
here we go. Let's do it.
I've heard people say like, well, you never but you might regret not having them. Like, oh, I've always regretted this. Austin's like,
You know, while I was studying this, I thought about it.
yeah, well, exactly. Regardless of not having it,
Our spacing on the 3.5
Kind of around that church, and they got back, and they said, this is the place to fall.
at least we're
So they might have trouble.
All right. I think everybody's here. We'll get started. Greg brought up last week about commentaries. You know, people have questions about commentaries. You know, how do you use them? What do you, that kind of thing. Well, I've got it up here. It's called Reading Romans by Robert F. Turner. We knew Robert. Robert's a brilliant man, actually. But this is more of a, it's verse by verse, but it's fairly simple, or simpler. There's nothing simple about Romans.
Can you order it online?
Yeah. Then there's one, good luck on this one. This was written right after the Civil War in about 1865 or 1866. So almost 160 years ago. by Moses E. Lard. To give you some idea, of course, I guess paper is in short supply, so it's very, very small writing. And to start each chapter, he's got it in Greek. Oh, and then he's got it in English. And then now, if you want to really dig, now I don't know if you can find this or not. You remember Joe Guthrie was here when Joe died. His wife Joyce gave me this fairly rare book, actually. Moses E. Lard from 1865 or so, in May of 19, and this would take a good year. And that's if you got after it every day. That's the complexity of Moses E. Lard. So we've got two extremes here. They're both very, very good. This one you can get online. This one, good luck in trying to find that one, but I want to bring it at least and show them that to you. So ask a question about how do you use a commentary? Well, first of all, you read, let's just take Romans 2 for example. You read Romans 2 over and over and over and over. Then you try to figure out what's he trying to, what's the big picture here? What's the big picture? Then get down into a few word studies. Then you go to your commentary. Some people try to take the shortcut, and you can try it. Read it once and then go straight to the commentary, and you get to you become a parrot. You get to parrot back what you just read. It's better than not anything at all, but that's the thing with commentaries. They're very, very helpful. I got a lot of them, and I've got others on Romans. I think I got one more, but these are the two extremes that I brought. I honestly think Mark Roberts, who's you all have there, is very, very good, and I think he takes some of Robert Turner's methods, trying to keep it as simple as possible for Romans, and amplifies on that, and he does a really, really good job. I highly recommend it. So Greg and I talked early on. I know this is preliminary. He's already done a lot. I'm going to read real quick. Talked about what's the purpose of this class. Now we could get in the weeds. If you want to get in the weeds, we can do that. And about this next Christmas, we'll be just about through with Romans. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep it at a higher level, try to look at the big picture, which Greg did a great job last week of showing the big picture. And we'll get into some verse things, but basically it's to see the big picture, and that should whet your appetite, hopefully, to get in a little more detail if you choose to do that. There's also another one by, this is the commentary on the New Testament, commentary on the New Testament. This is the first commentary I ever bought in 1970. When were we married? 71? In 1971. And I couldn't spell commentary at that time. By E.M. Zur. That's a very high level commentary also, but it's on the entire New Testament. I think you can still get it. Of course, these people are long dead, but anyway. All right. Questions on commentaries or that kind of thing? All right. Greg finished in the end of chapter 1. Paul said, that the Gentiles, the pagans, before they were converted to Christianity, were all of these things. They were idolatrous, they were lustful, sexually immoral, some were homosexuals, they were evil, covetous, malice, envy, murder, strife, all those things that we touched on. And so if Paul sent out these letters one chapter at a time, like your book said, at the end of chapter 1, you would have said, yes. Paul, you just like we heard in our sermon this morning, you nailed them, Paul, and I'm feeling pretty good about things. And then he gets to chapter 2. Hello?
That's scary.
Starting with verse 1, just real quickly, he says, therefore, what's the word therefore for? It connects what he just talked about with what he's getting ready to talk about. So, therefore, you are inexcusable, old man. Now remember, the church is Jews and Gentiles. The Jews, no doubt, from Acts 2, started the church when they went back after Pentecost. And then they were exiled for 6, 7, 8 years, depends on what you read. And the Gentiles, now they're in charge of the church because there's no Jews. The Jews come back and say, move over. Johnny's back in town. And the Gentiles said, I don't think so, Scooter. No. We've been doing just fine while y'all were gone. So there's one of the big overarching themes of Romans is division. Division. Jews, Gentiles. The Jews were feeling very smug, and Paul's bringing them down to earth here in Romans chapter 2. He lists these things. Now, this is in the last half, but I want to bring this out now, actually. I'm not going to wait. The Jews, he said, now, you rest on the law. You're confident in yourself. You approve of things excellent. You're a guide to the blind. Isn't that special? You're light to those in darkness. You're instructors of the foolish. You're teachers of babes. You circumcise. You take great pride in your circumcision, according to the old law. And you boast in the law. Now, at that point, they're standing up a little straighter. And they're going, What was the result in verse 24? What does that say? You have blasphemed who?
The name of God.
That attitude, as Sean talked about, that attitude, you've actually blasphemed God. Why? Why does he in the first verse or two there? Why? What were they doing?
Portray what it was all about.
They weren't living what they claimed to be doing. They were judging. Got to be real careful with judging. It's easy to do. It's not the right thing to do. But said, you're a guide to the blind. What did Jesus say about the blind leading the blind? They're both going to fall in the ditch. What about teacher of babes? Who were they not teaching? Themselves. They said, on the 8th day, according to the law, we were circumcised. What does God say? What does Paul say at the end of that chapter? Who are the circumcised? Circumcised in heart. That's the true circumcision of the heart. They had no trouble with confidence in themselves. They rested on the law. They just didn't do what?
Do it.
They didn't obey it. They didn't keep it. What do we call that today? Someone, big talk. Hypocrite.
You do one thing and say the other.
Yeah, you do one thing, say the other. Buddy of mine from Texas, Texas people proud of Texas. Don't say anything to them. And they have a saying down there, all hat and no cattle. All hat, no cattle. Big talk, big hats. They got no cattle. They got nothing. So all hat, no cattle. So that's kind of where the Jews were there. Now, before we get to thinking too highly or looking down, I'm glad we're not like them. Boy, those Jews were awful. those Gentiles were awful. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. What? What about me? They took great pride in this. For 1,500 years, they'd been God's people. And what did he say about the Gentiles during that time from Romans 2? They didn't have a law.
But they were doing things, something right, even if they didn't have.
They had the natural law, and they were doing things that were inherent. They knew that murder was wrong. They knew that stealing was wrong. And to the best of their ability, they were following that. And what did Paul say? Okay, you're going to be judged by that. You don't have to have the law. You have the law, the natural law. Now, dangers for Christians today. Well, you know.
I like what he put in the book is when we put ourselves above other people who we perceive are sinning and don't look at our own sins.
Absolutely. You know, and this is true, but big deal. Down to my grandchildren, we're 7th generations of the members of the Church of Christ.
There you go.
What I'm talking about. What else?
Pride.
Pride in what?
Just the past.
The
Status
past,
at any time, yeah.
heritage. What was that one?
Status.
Status.
Labels.
Labels. True. What else?
The amount of knowledge, like
So-
if you feel that you have a lot of knowledge,
Oh, good one.
kind of how they did,
Real good one.
they knew a lot.
Well, you know that been a Christian for 63 years. And some have been a Christian for a month. So therefore, what?
I'm better than you are.
I must be. I must be. We'll get to the punchline in a minute. I must be. Anything else?
An us versus them attitude.
Okay. Us, them. Anything else?
Checking boxes, like, oh, I
Oh,
come on
yeah.
Sundays and Wednesdays, and I read my Bible every day, just to check a box.
Checking boxes.
Like the book says, get out of jail free.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, I hadn't missed a Wednesday night in 30 years. You checking a box. Now, is it important to do that? Yeah. But, oh, I'm sorry. Taylor.
Oh, I would, just to add on to like the generations and stuff, you kind of could lose, like there could be a disconnect between knowing, like having like that fresh conversion
Mhm.
and even just understanding like what it's like to have come from the world
Absolutely.
a little bit.
We miss that sometimes. Yeah. We do. And if you're not careful, you've got your grandfather's faith, your mother's faith. You got to get your faith.
I was guilty of that for so many years. I had my parents' faith, but I really didn't have mine for way too long.
Well, I think we've all been there. Mike, good.
Well, I like the us versus them. In fact, I think I was talking to somebody here about when we were coming up through the church, it was the Church of Christ against all the other religions. Because we wanted to show that we were the ones.
That's in the Bible.
That's in the
That you
Bible.
can read
That's right.
about.
We're in the Bible, we're us, and you know, you're accused, you're the only one, you think you're the only ones going to heaven.
Mhm.
Well, we need to prove that we are. That's the way I remember my teaching coming up, and, that's not the right attitude to have.
Well,
either.
growing up in Kentucky, you know that's where the Ten Commandments came down, right?
That's the attitude.
That was the attitude of me growing up.
Yeah.
Every lesson was on a, huh?
It's not.
No.
Welcome to the West.
Seth knows. Same town, just different time. Yeah. Every lesson was on authority.
Yeah.
Every lesson was on, why we're going to heaven. Everyone else, not every lesson, but going to hell. And we're about halfway glad you're going.
That's right.
That's how it came across from those old guys.
Pulpit when you said it.
So
Yeah.
we got to be careful with that. And that's what Romans is teaching us. Have I been guilty of that in my younger? Yes. But as Taylor said, and it's such a salient point, that sometimes we forget that people who just maybe learned the truth in the last few months, the last couple of years, that was a big leap. They had been taught all of this other stuff, and then this is like a foreign to them in some ways. It wasn't for me because that's all I ever knew. Now, having said all of that, before we throw everybody under the bus here, were there advantages in being a Jew?
Yeah.
What were they?
Paul said in every way.
What advantages were you? We just said that they were not following.
They had the law.
They had the law to learn and study and read. What else?
They practiced.
They practiced it. Remember what they said in the old that when you wake up in the morning, you talk to your children. When you go to bed at night, you talk to your children about God. You put it on your doorways. You do all of these things. And all that's good. That's really good. So there are advantages of being a Jew. Now, talking to me here, were there advantages to being raised in the church? Absolutely there were. Like what?
Lifelong good teaching.
Good teaching,
Good examples.
good examples,
That background of knowledge that there was.
the background of knowledge. The background of knowledge. The knowledge was there. What else?
Maybe a higher percentage chance of making less drastic bad choices.
It was ingrained in you.
Foundation.
Yeah, it was ingrained in you early. You knew that your mother would give you one of these for if you did things that were wrong or it came back. Whereas some people did right, wrong. What difference does it make?
I was going to say the respect and righteousness of God is the foundation, or was the foundation in my
Yeah.
upbringing for everything that we did, every decision that was made, those type of things. And so that is a definite advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when we were kids are kids. My mother would say, get your Sunday clothes on. We're going to West End, we're going to church. Oh, man. I'm looking out in the field, my buddies out there playing baseball. I'm a kid, I don't know any better. Well, I know better, but I'm learning. They raise you up so when you get to 15, 16, 18, you've had a really good background in that. But you had this cajoling, you had this, you're going to do this kind of a thing. Whereas,
Guiding you in the right direction. They were guiding you in the right direction.
yeah, whether you,
Sometimes you rebelled.
sometimes you rebel. But it was still a very, very good background, Taylor.
I think as a parent, it goes along with this, but it's kind of a sidetrack. You have to be careful in how you go about that. That way you avoid, bringing your children up to have your faith or to make it be like, oh no, we have to go to church, so that's a box that we're checking, and that, I guess it kind of goes back to the whole, living the lifestyle, that way it's not just a checking box sort of thing, because as you get older, you know, going through especially like high school, college years, there's a lot more temptation and you get a lot more freedom.
You do.
And so you have to, as a parent, be very careful in how you address even those situations of rebellion, right? Like, if you are too hard, then that could end up pushing the kid away. Now, obviously, it may or may not, it's gonna end up being the kid's decision anyway, but that's, I guess, just like a fear of mine, is like, I don't want my kids to end up like being like, well, mom and dad always made us do this, so we don't wanna do it, so, I don't know, it's.
Yeah, there's a fine line, I guess. But when you're little, we always decided who the adult was going to be in the household. It was going to be us. You lose. You lose. We love you. We're going to take care. But you're going to do, when we load up to go to church, you're going to be in that back seat. Now, as you get older, eventually you got to stand on your own 2 feet, and it's a very valid point.
I think they have to see, children growing up have to see your example as a Christian.
Yes.
Not just on Sunday, but every day of the week.
Yeah.
Yes.
With
No.
all
No.
the
You're.
time, and I think that's
And
what Taylor's
doing
trying
it in
to say.
a way that like
Yeah.
Yes.
shows your excitement about
Yeah.
it,
Yes.
not.
I'm with you
they-
now.
You know,
your
they're
sincerity
seeing you.
with it, that
Yeah.
you're not just checking
Yeah.
boxes.
I'm with you. I'm
You're
with you
doing
now,
it for
100%.
the right
Yeah.
reason, and they
Okay.
can see that in you,
Yeah.
and will want to, because kids want to imitate.
Thanks for clarifying.
Taylor, it's even just
No.
sometimes those like the verbiage nuance of like we get to go.
That's right.
Instead of we have to go, we must
Yeah.
go. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we get to go. This is gonna be awesome because we get to go do this. Let's do this
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And
And
to,
the kids
you
get
know,
excited
sometimes
that
it's even
class,
that
you
little
know
bit.
that,
Yeah.
you know.
I remember, I'm coming real quick. I remember, I think I've told Michelle and Austin have heard the story, but my grandparents lived near a big lake in Tennessee, and I was water skiing when I was 8 or 9 years old. I loved it. And my dad, who was not a Christian until a few weeks before he died, said, "Hey, Mitch," he was whispering because he knew my mother heard it's going to be a problem. He said, "Get your bathing suit. We're going to go to the lake and water ski." And I'm 10 years old. I go to church and listen to a guy beat me into the ground, or I can go water skiing. I'm going water skiing. My mother came and said, "What are you doing?" Daddy said I could go. So next thing I know, my mama's taking my daddy into the bedroom of my grandpa's old house, and I could hear them talking, not yelling, but they were talking. Came back out and said, "Guess you better get your church clothes on." So there's that too. But okay, now I'll go to Greg.
I accused Mitch of calling Sean and having preached this sermon this morning when he started coming in here.
Yeah, it's a good warm-up.
But here's kind of maybe a big picture item off of, put the sermon into this as well. Guess what happens when you put yourself in the middle of service to God? It happens with the Jews, we see it here. It can happen with us as Christians. Oh, did it happen to the Jews in the old days? What happened when Saul put himself in the middle of service with God? What happened? Why did the prophets say everything they did to the Jews all along the way? Every time we put ourselves at the center of what's going on, this is the outcome. When we put God at the center of what's going on, we can do all the right things and then do them for the right reason. And now all of a sudden, we become dependent on God, which is what everyone has to be if they're going to live by faith, dependent on God.
Yeah.
And getting me out of that equation is hard to do.
It's hard to do. Newsflash. It's not about you. I don't know how old I was before I got that. Sad, really. And here, you're not the topic of every conversation. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about serving God. putting him first. It's not checking boxes. It's not your lineage, your heritage, how much you know. Someone that's baptized in the next 30 minutes comes up out of that water. They're just as important in God's eyes as someone who's been there literally a Christian for 63 years. Because, somebody else have the hand. I got one of
I did, but Greg got it.
okay. Here we go, right here.
And we can't consider that we've ever arrived. I have been a Christian for 80 years, maybe longer, I don't
So?
remember. But, you know, when you're my age, but there's still so
Sorry,
much I
Nelma.
don't know.
We love you, Nelma. Self-righteousness, self-justification, that's what they were doing. That's what we can do. That's what I have done. What is the result? Michelle touched on a little bit earlier. What's the result, pardon me, of self-justification and self-righteousness?
We'd end up the same place the Jews would.
Separation from God.
Classes.
Each other.
Church is divided into classes. Haves, have-nots, knowledge, not knowledgeable. People with a lot of problems, people with not many problems. All of a sudden, we're no better than the Jews and the Gentiles here. We divided the church based on our classifications. We can't do that. Now, where have I got it at? Don't end your... My fifth grade teacher said, do not end your sentences with a preposition. Well, I don't see it right now, but anyway. I had a point here. Anybody got anything while I collect myself on?
Yes, I have a comment I just thought.
Oh, I know what. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Teaching kids. And I used to think about, Teresa would say to the boys, we go to church, we go to school, we go to college, we go to work, we get married. Those are the priorities in life. We go to church, we go to school, we go to work, and we may get married. Over and over again, and I would think, why are you putting all this on the same level? But it occurred to me one day when she was just yakking to the boys, she says, we go to church, we go to God first. We go to school second, because they're just little kids. And then we go to college, or we go to work, and then we get married. That's the priority in your life. And that's a pretty good way if you start the kids off saying, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and then you show them.
That's a good point. Verse 3 and verse 10. Is there comfort in those verses? God is not a respecter of persons. There is no partiality with God. In Acts chapter 10, what did Peter, what was his conclusion after his mountaintop experience with Cornelius, the first Gentile convert? You know, God, I'm not eating this, what you put down this sheet, because I'm a Jew and Jews don't eat that. He said, what God's called common, you don't call unclean. And he said, I perceive that God is no respecter of persons. Does that scare you, or is that a comfort to you? It should be a very comforting thing. You don't have to be highly educated. You don't have to be a multimillionaire. You don't have to be a dentist. You don't have to be an anesthetist. You don't have to be any of those things. All those things are wonderful, and you're to be congratulated for how you've gotten in your life, or a bank president. But you don't have to be that to go to heaven.
You don't
God's-
have to worry about being any of that.
He's
Just
not a
be
He's
Christian. It's
not a
comforting.
respecter of persons. He's not a respecter of persons. To me, that's comforting.
Be who you are.
Austin?
I'm kind of thinking of the parable of the laborers in the vineyard that kind of really speaks to the parallel nature of the early workers and the late workers. The early workers all of a sudden turned jealous toward the end of the story, but God's like, I treated you fair. You're all on the same playing field there, you know.
Yeah. The 11th hour, I like that a lot. I didn't have it in my notes, but the 11th or 12th hour Christians. Wait, you're going to pay the guy that just started an hour ago the same pay as you paid me when I started at sunup? And Jesus said, yes, I am. Why? It's mine. It's mine to give. It's mine to do. My dad was baptized just about maybe a month in Bowling Green, about a month before he died, in a rehab tub. There was no water there. So they filled the tub up. The doctor said, let's just pour a little water on him. He's good. Happened to be a nurse that morning, just happened to be a nurse there, and said, I'm a member of the Church of Christ. We're gonna immerse this man. She just happened to be there.
Coincidence.
Yeah, he had to sign a release and all those things. Baptized him that morning. He was dead in a few weeks. Who does the justifying?
God.
You? Me? God does the justifying. What does justified mean from your book? To be justified.
Justified and did.
To make or declare, probably a better word, to declare right. Declare who's right. And he mentions like a judge. You know, you're either the plaintiff or you're the, what's the other one called? Defendant. Where's my sister when I need her? You have the trial, and the judge declares you innocent. He declares you justified.
I heard it all like this: justified hadn't sinned.
Has what?
Justify hadn't sinned. Just if I hadn't sinned.
Oh, I'm with you now. Well,
Maybe that's Texas, I don't know.
that's okay. You got a million of them. To declare to be right. God, it's His responsibility. It's not mine as self-justified. It's not yours. It's God declares us to be right. And to be right, to be have these things, to be right, to have these things, or to be right, how does He define it? Hearing or, and Carolyn mentioned it earlier, doing. Doing. Christianity is about doing. It's about knowing. You got to know, what to do to become a Christian, but it's about doing. It's about doing. Questions or thoughts? Anything else for them?
This is a good thing when we're talking about raising children. They need to see you doing, and so that when they grow up, they will be not so selfish, that they can see you putting other people first.
Now, for 18 years, did we get it right 100% of the time? You did, probably. Probably, I'm not exaggerating. I did not. There are times when I didn't handle things the way I should have. But you got it for 18 years. Mama Bird's got her little bird for about just a matter of a few weeks. God in His wisdom said, you're going to have them for about 25% of their life. You got a chance to do it right. And I appreciate that about that. That we've got them. You can make a mistake, and we all do, all have, but God gives you another chance. Greg?
just an interesting connector here, talking about justified as being declared right. Those who are declared right are also called in this book the righteous. And back to chapter 1, how are the righteous to live? Not by self-justification, self-righteousness, no, righteous live by faith. That connection comes all the way through this, that if you're looking for how God unifies, he unifies those people who live by faith. Everyone else is dividing themselves. Only those unify themselves who actually decide to trust God and do his will.
Amen. This is how I did high school classes too. I had boards all over my room, constantly writing. So you got to follow me. To be justified from what? To be declared right, to be declared not guilty. All that's fine, but declared not guilty or justified from sins. And to be justified to righteousness. Bingo. That's it. That's it. Justification. Andy?
We were talking about being example to kids, but also everyone else that we surround ourselves with on a daily basis. Because verse 24 says the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you.
Yeah.
Because of your bad example, because of your hypocrisy. We discourage others from coming to Christ and from sharing that faith that we should have.
Can we blaspheme God's name as Christians today among the Gentiles? We sure can, by our examples, by our language, by fill in the blank. I'll never forget, long gone, our first Wednesday night here, years ago. A guy was out in the parking lot there, and he was cussing like a sailor. And I thought, well, he's just came in from the street. He was waiting on the Lord's Supper table the next Sunday. He was a pilot. And I thought, dude, you're hurting the Lord's cause wherever you are. If you're talking like that in the parking lot, I know what you're doing at work. There are people like that. There have been times maybe when I've done that as a younger person. Got to be careful with that because we can blaspheme. My dad was like, he didn't become a Christian for so long because of the hypocrites in the church. Are there hypocrites in the church? Yes, there are. I heard it said like this one time. Hey, would you rather spend a few years with a few hypocrites on this earth, or would you rather spend eternity with every hypocrite that ever lived forever? Now, when you put it in perspective there, yes, there's a few hypocrites. Yes.
And what better place for them than in the church? Maybe they'll learn.
Maybe they'll learn. Maybe they'll learn. Since we're going to start on chapter 3, this is a one chapter. We could go 2 or 3 weeks on this, but we're not going to have the opportunity to do that because we're going to hit chapter 3 on Wednesday. But does chapter 2 hit you particularly hard from your? I'd be interested real quickly. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes. Did it hit you hard? Chapter 2? We've touched on some of this, but why?
It's sort of putting everyone in their place.
That's it. I've got all these things written down. I could not have said it better than that. Chapter 2 is putting us all in our place. Be careful how you judge, because you're probably going to be guilty of something very similar. Remember in chapter 1, all these things, those people were not guilty of every one of those, but they were guilty of some of them. The Bible can put you in your place. It's about him, not about me. That's Romans. Unity. And you Jews and you Gentiles 2,000 years ago in the Roman church, you better learn to get along, because right now you're not. And that's for us too, Carolyn.
He's really taking this chance to say, you think you're better than the others for this reason or for that reason? No, you're all together. You are unified. You're all wrong.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Very good. Yeah, you're all unified, all right. Unified wrong. Now he goes on to say over a few chapters, and we'll get to that down the road, but before you Gentiles get too big head, I grafted you in to this as a wild shrub, wild tree. And I grafted you into the main trunk. I can take you out too. I can take you out. So be careful. Kimberly?
I think when we start to rest on those things of like generations, pride, all those things, you're towing the line of living as if God owes you something.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous place.
It's a very dangerous place. Now, as we talk about, those things do help you. They do help you. But be real careful about that. Carol,
I think you have to be careful, looking at
you always start your statements off, and you have to be careful. But I'm scared.
We're out of time.
No, we're not. You go right ahead.
No, it's, you have to be careful about resting on your heritage.
Yes,
And you can't ride coattails into heaven.
No.
It's a personal responsibility.
it is.
And again, whether you are a Christian for 5 minutes or 50 years, doesn't matter. And I thought that Mark really summed it up well. I actually marked it in my book. It's the doing that matters, not the hearing and the having.
That's it.
That was highlighted for me.
Sometimes, no, thank you. Yeah, I can pick it, Carol. We go back and forth. Now, some I couldn't say that to, but I can be Carol. Sometimes we think there's gonna be a bus that pulls up out front, and we're all gonna get on it on the last day. I hope we all get on it.
Might not be a seat.
There'll be seats, but we're gonna get on it one at a time. And at the judgment, how are we gonna be judged? As the Monte Vista Church of Christ, as the Lost River Church of Christ, we're gonna be judged as Kimberly Myers, Gary. That's a nice recovery, actually.
That was really good.
Mitchell Johnson stepped forward. Oh my word. One at a time. We're not going on anybody's coattails. That should be sobering. It is to me. It really is. Thank you all for your good comments. And let's keep the big picture of Romans going. And if you want to get real detail, we can do that.